Hello, how are you? Welcome to my craft room. My name is Michele and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stamping Up. Now, as I said in my comments earlier this morning when I was posting that I was going to be doing this live today, I've got no idea what we're doing. I still don't have much more of an idea. I know what stamp set I want to play with. I know what colour my base card is going to be, but I think I might need some help from you guys. So in working out what else we can put with this card or this idea to jazz it up. So let me flip my camera over. Please jump on, say hello, let me know where you're from, and please comment because this is going to be a card that we're all going to work on together today. So because I've lost my mojo a little bit at the moment, so I need your help to bring it back. So let me flip my camera so I can see all the comments and you can see what I've got here in front of me. And here we go. So this is what I've been playing with so far, and I have been making a right old mess here. I've also done that one, which is going in the bin because I'm not happy with it. But this is the stamp set I thought we'd play with. Everlasting Beauty. It's one of the new ones in our catalogue. It's one that I have fallen in love with because I love the Australian native flowers. Of course, this one here is the Waratah. Now, this one down here, to me, looks like the King Protea. I'm not sure whether I'm correct. It's got that Protea look. It's like a bit like a Waratah, except the outer leaves actually come up a lot bigger, which is what that is doing. It has got the ball center, which is what a King Protea is has. So I'm treating that as a King Protea. These two, I'm not quite sure what they are. I've done a little bit of research, but I can't work it out. So if you guys know what they could be, because there's very good chance that these two flowers could even be New Zealand flowers rather than Australian. But I know that's a Waratah. I believe I'm correct in saying that that is a Protea or a King Protea. I'm going to colour it like a King Protea. That much I know. But it is only a relatively small stamp. It's not a really huge stamp. So let me grab it out. So as you can see, it's not that big. So I'm going to place that on my block. So usually, as you can see with this one here, my messy one, I would like to have that a bit bigger so it does cover up quite a big area of my card front. What I've done is I've cut my card front down as much as I want to. My card base size is 10.5 by 14.9. So what I've done is I've cut this down, or this piece here, down 2 centimeters all the way around. I probably could cut it down. Let's give it a go. We're going to cut this down a little bit more. Now, as I said, if you have any comments, if you have got any ideas of what I can add to this card or not add to this card, if I've got it, I will try to do it. But please jump on and make a comment and let me know what you think, and let's make a card all together. So all I'm doing is I'm taking off 1 centimeter. So I always like to cut my A4 piece of cardstock straight into quarters if I'm using them for my card fronts. So generally I'll take my card base here, cut it in half. I'm going to be left then with, so that's my card base. Then I'm going to be left with another half piece, which I cut in half lengthwise, if that makes sense. So I end up with 2 of these. So all I've done then is basically taken off 3 centimeters all the way around. So that's now actually quite small. So that might work a lot better. So we'll give that a go. I've got a piece of garden green here with me, which we might matte this piece. Garden green is not usually a colour I go for, but I've pulled out my watercolor pencils to color this in. And one of the colors in my watercolor pencils is the garden green. So, because on a King Protea, the leaves are actually quite bright and green. Stems are always, they're very woody, because being a drier area, the Australian plants need to have, they've got quite small leaves generally and quite woody, so it holds all the moisture inside, so the heat of the Australian sun isn't sapping them of all the moisture. So, and that's probably about as much as I know about gardening. I'm not a gardener. I generally will kill things, but I can colour something in. I've been playing with some colours with my watercolour pencils, so because their leaves are quite bright, I'm going to use garden green and granny apple green together. I'm going to be using the flirty flamingo and a bit of cherry cobbler. The centre of a King Protea is very silvery white with a bit of hint of pink. So I've got my white watercolor pencil, and I've also got my, oh, that's basic black. I don't want basic black. That's probably why it was coming up a bit dark. Actually, basic black might not be too bad. No, that's not basic black. That's basic grey. Oh, golly, can't even read today. I've got my other watercolor pencils there. So I've got my basic grey, and I've got Early Espresso. Now I can't even remember whether Early Espresso is still available, but that's the watercolor pencils. I haven't bought the new set, but I know there's only a couple of colors missing from it. So they're the sort of colors I'm looking at playing with. Of course, you can swap them out for whatever you want, but I'm trying to get that King Protea look. King Proteas are one of my favorite Australian flowers. Mainly because when I got married many years ago to my husband, I actually carried Australian wildflowers, and the King Protea was the main flower. My mum was a cake decorator back then, and she did a King Protea for me to go on my cake, which was all made out of sugar. So it was very beautiful. So it's always been a very favourite flower of mine. I just wish this stamp was probably twice the size. But anyway, let's see how we go. So I've got our piece of cardstock. I've got a card front. This one here, we might be doing some matting. We'll see. I'll keep this here as a reference. As you can see, I'm going back to these colours. I was playing up the top here with some different colours, like with the pinks and the flirty flamingo and the cherry cobbler, and the same here, just playing and adding a bit of white over the top. I'm not going to try to colour it in too much. I think if you colour it in too much, you're going to lose some of your design. I'm not stamping this in black. I'm stamping it in smoky slate because I just want to keep the colours a little bit on the subtler side, and I didn't want that sort of heavy black. And even the sentiment, I'm going to I'm going to stamp in the smoky slate. So we could actually even, I'm wondering how it go if we did actually stamp it in the basic grey. Let's just have a quick look. We can clean our stamp off. Just turn this piece over. Yeah, it might even be better doing it in the basic grey. So I might do my stamping in basic grey rather than the smoky slate. But anyway, this is a play. Let's see how we go, and let's start stamping. So here's our piece of cardstock here. I was at one stage looking at doing these in the blends, but I wanted to use the watercolor pencils as I haven't used them for a while. The only other thing I have done with my watercolor pencils, I have really sharpened them up. So I've got an electric pencil sharpener, and I have actually given them all quite a sharp point because I don't really think I want to color. I just want to do some soft lines. So I'm going to stamp our flower image. Now, it's whether I stamp this in the center, or I'm going to stamp it to one side. At the moment, I think I might try to do it in the center, and this piece of cardstock is about the same width as my block, and I think I've got my stamp centerized there. So let's just go straight down there. Okay, beautiful. That's stamped up quite nicely. Probably not quite center, but that's okay, because what I can do is I can stamp my words and take them off center a little bit. So let's do a little bit of coloring. So here are our pencils. So I'm going to start off with my Flirty Flamingo and my Cherry Cobbler. Now, King Proteas tend to be a soft pink to silvery grey with a darker pink around the edges. So all I want to do here is really, I'm just doing a little flick. So I'm just doing a little line like that and just a little flick and just flicking that colour up towards the top. I just want to keep the lines of the artwork still visual without using the darker black to make it predominant. I just want to keep that quite soft. So I'm just keeping this all really soft and a light touch, because we can always go back and add a bit more later on. So I'm just going over all of these. Now these here, I'm going to classify that one as a leaf, but these here ones here, these petals here are all definitely petals of a King Protea. So I'm going to do the same with these. I'm just drawing a line from the bottom up and just flicking that colour out. The base card of my cardstock is some soft seafoam, because I just wanted to keep a little bit of the softness rather than going towards a basic white. I just wanted to keep a little bit of that softness there. Now, these ones here, I'm going to say that that one is a part of the petal, and that one too. This one here could be a leaf or a petal. It's always good to go back to your stamp and keep that to one side so you can actually see. I'm going to just move that stamp pad because I'll come back later on and go, where did I put it? It'll be underneath something. So again, I'm just going to do the same here and just keeping my picture here as a reference so I can actually see and refer back to it. So again, just keeping all these colours fairly light. Now I'm going to come in now with a bit of the Cherry Cobbler, and again just to add a little bit more colour in there, and again just doing a little line flick all the way through. Give some of those edges, some of those folds a little bit of a darker pressure. When I was looking at a King Protea picture earlier, it was really more around the tips and everything that you had that darker colour. Because most of the flower petals are that lovely silvery pink. Don't want to put too much of this darker colour in. Okay, so I might just leave that at that for the moment. I'm going to bring in maybe a little bit of this basic grey. I just want to use it quite lightly, and that ball in the middle of my flower, I'm just giving it a little bit of flick of colour. Now it is predominantly silvery white with a hint of pink, so I'm sort of hoping that grey would just give a little bit of depth, I suppose. I'm just going to put a little bit of pink in there. Now, a King Protea, you've got that ball, which is like that. There's almost a line here around the edge, and you sort of have this ball here. Now, below this line, it's really just a visual line. It's not an actual line in the flower. Below that is all the little, I suppose, stamen stems, because this is like a big stamen. And that's all coming down that way. And then all of this here is almost velvety. It's really pretty when you look at a King Protea. It's sort of got this velvety, but this side of it, so it gives a hint of a line. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this in here just to give me a little bit of the line. And then I'm going to bring in my white and just really bring that into the center there and bring it down a little bit, because I really want that nice velvety sort of look if I can from the pencil. Now I'm keeping this quite light because when I was playing with this earlier, I was getting, I think, a little bit too dark with my colors. I want to keep it light. I don't want to make it too dark. So in some respects, I'm going to leave that for the moment, and I'm going to come in with my brown or early espresso and just give these stems here that solid brown stem that they have. So now we're going to grab our green with that for our leaves. And again, I'm going to start with my lightest colour. So I'm going to start with my granny apple green. And it's the tops that are really going to be more that. So again, I'm just doing a flicking, but this time I'm flicking downwards rather than upwards. So with my petals here, I was flicking up. With this one here, I'm going to flick down. Just drawing those lines again, because really we're just sort of giving it, I suppose in some ways, a hint of colour. Now, of course, the leaves on King Protea aren't this sort of limey green that we've got here with this granny apple. And that's where the garden green is going to come in. And we're going to flick this one upwards. So really, it's just going to have that hint of that lighter green coming in, because they've got quite shiny sort of polished leaves. And mind you, I was looking at a photograph earlier today of the King Protea. So in real life, possibly could look even different again. I had a neighbour in Mittagong that used to grow them, and pity he's still not around for me to go and have a better look. So again, I'm really just drawing those lines, because it's a small image, and if we colour it too bright, then you are going to lose a lot of that colour. I might just come back in here and just put a little bit of white into these petals, because I do, and I'm flicking actually downwards at the moment, because I do want to sort of make them look like they were a silvery pink. Now, please remember, if you are watching, say hello. I'd love to say hi back. And it's always good to know where people are visiting from. Now I'm going to bring in my basic grey again, and I just want to go just add a little bit of shading. I'm not adding too much, just around the tops of these center part of my flower, just so then it just come back in and add a little bit more white if you think you've gone a little bit too much. I just wanted to add that, just coming back in and just adding a little bit more of the color, just defining a couple of edges. And I think that that's about it. So if I just bring this up to camera a bit, I hope you can see that. So it's really keeping it quite soft and not going as dark as my originals. This one here is the blends plus with a bit of watercolor pencil over the top. This one here is more all watercolor pencil. But I think I like my colors and everything. This one's a little bit truer to color. Okay, so we're going to finish this one off. So let me just remove all that out of the road, and let me bring in my card base. So that's going to go on there like that. Now I am going to have to see if I can find some basic white to do. Sometimes, yep, I've got a piece here to do my card insert. So that's going to go there. So we're going to put up our sentiment on there. So let me grab another block. I've got one right here for it. And my sentiment, and the sentiment I'm going to be using is a nice one. It just says, if friends were flowers, I'd have the pick of the bunch. So I just thought that's quite pretty. Now this I'm going to stamp. As I said, I've stamped this a little bit that way onto this side. Excuse me. I'm going to sneeze. Oh. I wonder if there's a third one coming. So I'm going to stamp my sentiment now a little bit to the opposite side, just to balance that off a little bit. Not too much, but just, I'm putting it just slightly below. Now I have got some linen thread here, because I thought we might put a bit of linen thread on that. And the other thing I've got here too is soft sea foam. And I'm going to grab a blending brush here. Just feel like this is just a little bit flat. And I'm going to just put some blending just around my edges here. I have gone a little bit dark there, so I hope that that will quieten down a bit. Of course, when you're using your blending brush, always start off your page and come onto your piece of cardstock, because there's nothing worse than getting a big blob of colour where you don't really want it. Now I have got this all linked up to my YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, please jump on, say hi. Just bringing that colour in, because that actually looks quite good. I like the look of that. And that will tone down a little bit when that starts to fade, starts to dry out. So let's have a look. So we're going to pop that onto there. I just need to grab my bone folder here. So I hope you've all had a lovely week. I'm sorry I wasn't with you last week, but each year locally I get to go to an embroidery weekend. So I had a lovely 3 days just doing nothing but doing embroidery. So if you follow me on my personal Facebook page, you would have seen some of the things that I've made. Now it's whether I leave that like that or whether we put a mat underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my cardstock down. So as I said before, what I do when I've got a full strip like this, I like to cut it into a quarter. It might be a little bit of wastage, but it just really gives me a good idea of what I'm using. So I've now got a quarter of a sheet there of A4. Now to get this piece here, I just cut 3 centimeters off all the way around. So I'm going to cut this down to, I'm going to start off by cutting 2.5 centimeters off all the way around. So it just means my mat is going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed if I got all that right, that little bit bigger. Okay, so there's that. And actually, I think that doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to adhere these 2 pieces together. Use my multi-purpose glue. I think this card's turning out a lot better than what I expected. Now, who knew that garden green could look so nice? Not usually one of my choice of colours. But there you are. So let me grab some of my linen thread. Now this is quite curly because it's been on the roll for a while. Hi, Diana. How are you? You like the mat? Yeah, it's not bad. I think it's coming up a lot better than I thought. So my linen thread was very curly from being on the roll, so all I'm doing is just running my finger down it or my fingernail down it just to give it a straighter, straightening it out a little bit. Sometimes when they've been rolled around something for a long time, they retain a memory, and it's like anything, we just need to retrain it. So what I'm going to do is wrap this around maybe about 3 times. 1, 2, 3, maybe just a little bit more length. Okay, now everyone's just coming on now. Is it I know the Alyssa Tilsner had issues the other day with her Facebook not showing that she was on when she came on. And I've heard a few people are having problems with Facebook. So, and I notice you're all on Facebook. So I'm wondering whether there's an issue there with Facebook because you've all jumped on at the same time. But it's lovely to see you all, Lorraine and Joan. I'm just going to tie a bow here with my linen thread. Grab my scissors here and trim that away. So I just want to move that knot over just a little bit. So I'm just going to bend my card also slightly, just so I can move that. Yeah, it is playing up, Diana. I think, yeah, it's I was part of a stamp camp, not last weekend, weekend before, and we had all sorts of trouble with our Facebook. We had to end up doing all our cards by recording them and then putting them up on Facebook because it just wouldn't play with us. It was quite annoying. Just going to make that a little bit smaller. That bow isn't wanting to quite go the way I want it to go, but anyway, that's all right. I think that's quite good. So you guys will have to go back and watch the replay of me colouring in these. So I've just used my watercolour pencils to colour in my King Protea colours, keeping it quite soft. And I've used Flirty Flamingo with Cherry Cobbler, Garden Green and Granny Apple Green, Early Espresso, which I know is discontinued, Basic Grey and White. And instead of colouring in, I just did a little flicking line just to get that soft sort of look. And because the King Protea in the centre, the ball is actually quite velvety, so I've used the white on that with just a little bit of pink and a little bit of the basic grey, so hopefully to keep that softness on that King Protea. And we're doing all this on soft sea foam cardstock. So that's now going to go on there, and I'm going to use dimensionals to pop that on. Now, please, since Facebook is playing up so much, just remember that you can watch me through YouTube as a live, and you're quite welcome to jump on and catch me there as well. I am putting quite a few dimensionals in there. Keeping this card and the layout very simple, because really you don't want to overcomplicate it, especially when you've done all that work with the colouring in. You really do want your work to be the hero of this, and not sometimes not your designer series paper and things. So I'm just lining this up. I'm just going to use my grid paper here. Just trying to make sure I've got all this fairly square before I push it down. There we go. I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so I've got some basic white here, and I'm going to cut a piece of basic white to go in the center of my card. So I'm going to cut this down 10 centimeters. By 14.4. Again, I will put all these measurements and everything I've used on my blog. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to get around to blogging. Tomorrow I'm heading up to the Blue Mountains. We've got 3 major birthdays between May and July. So we're celebrating 200-year birthday, which is my mother turned 80 in May. My husband turned 60 this month, and I turn 60 next month. And I'm just hoping, is it my eyes or is it on crooked? I do not know. I think it might be right. Okay, so I'm going to, maybe we might stamp on here. Let's just have a look. We'll clean the stamp off. Gone back to my messy little self, and I'm working in quite a little messy portion. You just caught the end of the colouring. Thank you. I'm glad you like those choices, Diana. Make sure that is clean. What I might do is just in the basic grey, so we do want to make the inside of our card just as pretty as the outside. And I'm just going to stamp it off a little bit. Might just add a little bit of this soft sea foam just around those edges. I don't think I'm going to colour that in. I'm going to leave it in the basic grey. But I just want to add a little bit of colour just around there a little bit. I'm not going up too far. I'm just really putting a bit of colour in that corner. Hi, Lorraine. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun celebrating those birthdays. My mother can be she was a little bit like, I don't want to celebrate my birthday, but when we sort of said, well, we're celebrating everybody's, I think she's now getting into the swing of it, which is good. Because we do have to celebrate. I think it's great to celebrate birthdays. I love celebrating birthdays. Love getting together with family and friends. And we're going to Lura, which is going to be probably cold. A bit higher up in the mountain than what we are here. It will be nice. My sister and my niece and nephews are joining us, and 3 of my 4 boys. We won't have all of them there, but that's okay. So there we go. So there's my card. Didn't know how this was going to go. Can now throw those other pieces that I was playing with earlier into the bin. Just as I said, because this is really small design, you don't want to become too heavy in your colouring. I think keep it light and simple. And as I said, I've just really just flicked lines to colour this with a very, very sharp pencil. So make sure you have your watercolour pencils sharpened. I'm not going to be going over it with water or anything like that, or with the blender pen. I'm going to leave it like that so you can see the lines. I think it's worked out really well. You could, if you wanted to, add a little bit of bling. I'm not naturally a blingy person, but just going through and seeing what I've got here. If you wanted to add these are discontinued, but they're probably about the only thing I would add, which is the frosted epoxy dots. So I really just want to keep it very, very simple. I don't want to go too bright. So you've got stacks of those epoxy dots. Don't even know whether I want to add that or just leave it. I think I might just leave it the way it is. I think yeah, I think sometimes it's nice to be simple and just keep things just, very simple, and it's a piece of artwork. Sometimes if you add too much bling and things to it, I think you detract away from it. So I'm going to leave that just like it is. So thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry, everybody, that watching through Facebook. Facebook is playing up. But as I said, if you want to watch me through YouTube, you can. So hopefully I will see you next Friday at 1 o'clock. Good night from Canada. Well, I hope you get a good night's sleep, Lorraine. And have a great day tomorrow. So take care, and I'll catch up with you all next Friday. Bye for now.